The first time I saw him walk into the gym, I swear the doors looked too small for his shoulders. Seventh grade, barely a teenager, and yet the other kids already called him a grown man. At pep rallies, the quarterback's name echoed through the microphone, the wide receiver posed like a local celebrity, and then there was him, standing in the back like a misplaced piece of construction equipment. Nobody asked what he wanted, they just pointed at his frame and decided, offensive line. His classmates joked, if he doesn't play football, it's a crime. His parents clapped politely in the bleachers, pride painted across their faces, though I could see the nervous glance between them every time the coach mentioned weight gain. More protein shakes, more pasta, more pounds. I wondered if they realized their son was losing his childhood at the dinner table. The funny thing about kids like him is that they're never allowed to be kids. At 12, he was expected to be a protector. At 13, a bodyguard. While the other boys chased touchdowns and headlines, his reward was silence. The only time his name would be remembered was if the quarterback hit the turf. And as I watched him lumber out of the gym that day, surrounded by cheers that weren't for him, I couldn't help but ask myself, did he really choose this game, or did the game choose him? Friday night, under the gym lights, the quarterback's name filled the loudspeakers. The wideout struck a pose for the cameras, his photo already destined for tomorrow's sports page. And behind them, just off to the side, stood the offensive lineman, too big for the folding chair he sat on, too quiet for anyone to notice. At the pep rally, he looked less like a teenager and more like scaffolding, invisible but holding the whole building upright. Of course, no headline was written for the scaffolding. I've been covering high school ball long enough to know the pattern. Quarterbacks get features, wide receivers get highlight reels, and linemen get a single line at the bottom. The offensive line held firm. That's it. Meanwhile, the kid spends his evenings choking down 6 meals a day, groaning through pasta and protein shakes while his classmates are out at the movies. Teachers whisper about GPAs, wondering if football will eat his academics alive. Teammates pat him on the back when he clears a lane, but you can tell in their eyes, he's not a star, he's a tool, a moving shield. Recruiters barely glance at his tape because, let's be honest, who rewinds to admire perfect blocking? They want touchdowns, one-handed grabs, 50-yard bombs, not silence. And yet, silence is all he gets. Silence when he wins his battle, noise only when he slips. Watching him from the bleachers, I sometimes wonder if he knows the deal. Everyone cheers the fireworks, but no one claps for the man lighting the fuse. Still, here's the question no one dares ask at pep rallies. What happens if one day the scaffolding decides it's done holding up the stage? It's Saturday in a college town, and the quarterback's face is plastered across every bar wall. The running back has his own chant. The wide receiver has girls lining up for selfies. The crowd roars their names before kickoff, and nobody bothers to mention the linemen shuffling out of the tunnel. They're the foundation of the house, and let's be honest, no one ever throws a parade for concrete. But I've watched those kids up close. They eat like it's a second job, 6 meals and 2 shakes a day, shoveling food while their stomachs beg for mercy. They limp into classrooms with swollen knees, still expected to pass exams or risk losing the very scholarship that keeps them here. One bad twist of an ankle, and it's not just a game they lose. It's tuition, housing, their whole future. Fans don't see that. They see the fireworks, the 70-yard touchdown, the diving catch. They don't see the silent labor behind it, the lineman's hands taped so thick he can't hold a pencil, the hours of film study that never make it to ESPN. In the stadium, he's just a wall. In the locker room, he's finally a brother, because only in that OL room do they understand what it costs to keep someone else's name in lights. They call him a monster, a wall, a freak. But he's only 19. 19 with back spasms, 19 with anxiety gnawing at him, 19 pretending to be indestructible while still figuring out who he is. And as the crowd chants for the golden boy under center, I find myself wondering, what happens if the foundation decides just once not to hold? By the end of training camp, his name was already floating on Twitter, not for pancake blocks, but for slipping in one-on-ones. A grainy clip, a laughing emoji, 1,000 strangers calling him a bust before he'd played a single NFL snap. That's how it begins now, not with applause, but with ridicule. Step back, and the picture gets clearer. The rookie contract looks big on paper, but compared to the skill guys, he's practically invisible to sponsors. No shoe deals, no Gatorade commercials, just direct deposit and silence. Meanwhile, he's buying dinners for the entire offensive line, checks bigger than a month's rent, because hazing says rookies pay their dues. He hauls veterans' luggage through airports and smiles while doing it. That's the cost of belonging. The locker room glitters with temptations. New cars in the parking lot, Late-night parties, agents whispering about investments that sound more like scams. Reporters chase the quarterback's every word. Nobody's writing features about the lineman stretching his hip flexors in the corner. He's not the campus star anymore. He's a cog in the factory. Vital, but replaceable the moment it jams. And yet, here's the irony. For all the bruises, all the bills, all the ridicule, he still shows up every morning before dawn, tape on his fingers, helmet in hand. He won't say it, but you can see it in his eyes. He knows exactly what the league thinks of him. The only question left lingering in the smoke of another rookie dinner: what happens if one day he decides he won't play along? The replay wouldn't stop. Over and over, the announcer's voice called his name, not in praise, but in blame. One sack, one mistake, and suddenly he was the headline. My son tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Mom, why are they saying Dad messed up?" I didn't know how to explain that the television never shows the 60 flawless snaps, only the one stumble. All night I'd watched him do the invisible work, anchoring against a pass rush, shifting his feet for a mobile quarterback one series, then building a wall for a pocket passer the next. No flags, no pressure, no drama. But none of that makes the broadcast. The stars get the spotlight, touchdowns, celebrations, contract talks, while he disappears into the shadows unless something goes wrong. In the locker room, they'll tell him good job. At home, we'll tell him we're proud. But the cameras don't care about wives, kids, or quiet perfection. To them, he's just another name on the stat line, another contract waiting to be devalued by a single bad Sunday. And as the highlight looped again, I caught myself wondering, what if one mistake doesn't just cost him the game, but everything else he's built? He limped into the training room again last night, 28 years old with the body of a 50-year-old. Ankles taped, knees swollen, back stiff like rusted metal. We wrapped him in ice, handed him anti-inflammatories, and pretended it was normal. Around here it is. I've watched him for years. The sleepless nights, the short temper at home, the silent war inside his own body. Painkillers pile up like candy, but they barely dull the edges anymore. He laughs it off in front of teammates, but when the room is empty, he moves like an old man searching for balance. The league doesn't see that. The league only sees availability. Play through pain is the unspoken oath. Every time he tapes a finger or pushes through a groin strain, the machine keeps running. And like every machine, it runs until it breaks. Fans still imagine him as a wall, a monster. But I see the cracks. I hear the joints grind, the tendons stretch thin. Behind him, there's always a younger, cheaper, hungrier body warming up, ready to replace him. That's the cruel math of this business. So I patch him up again, send him back to practice, knowing full well what the cameras won't show, that every snap costs him pieces of himself he'll never get back. And sometimes, as I watch him shuffle out the door, I wonder, what happens if the machine decides just once not to start? I almost didn't recognize him at first. Sitting in the corner of a coffee shop, hoodie pulled tight, stirring a lukewarm cup. Someone whispered, "Didn't he used to play?" And yes, he did. He was the wall that kept quarterbacks upright, the name you only heard when something went wrong. Now, no cameras, no headlines, just silence. It struck me how different his exit was compared to the stars he once protected. The quarterback got a farewell tour, documentaries, highlight reels looping on ESPN. Wide receivers had tearful press conferences, jersey swaps, tribute videos. He had a contract that wasn't renewed, a phone that stopped ringing. No ceremony, no curtain call, like a stagehand who kept the play alive but never appeared in the cast photo. I'd read about others like him. Some joined lawsuits with the NFLPA over concussions. Some slipped into financial trouble without endorsements to fall back on. A few ended up teaching high school ball, breaking down footwork for kids who barely knew his name. For him, it seemed the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the identity crisis carved into his face. If I'm not a football player, then who am I? We chatted for a moment. He smiled politely, said he was doing fine. But behind the smile, I saw the weight, years of sacrifice carried without applause. And as I left the shop, I couldn't shake the thought, maybe his story isn't finished. Maybe the second act hasn't even begun. In history, we rarely remember the shields. We carve the names of generals into marble, celebrate the heroes who score the victories, but the men who held the line, the ones who absorbed the blows, fade into silence. The offensive tackle is no different. He is the shield of the modern gridiron, and like so many shields in war, his name is seldom etched on the monument. From boyhood, his destiny was decided for him. Broad shoulders meant duty, not choice. He grew into a protector, a foundation others built their glory upon. And yet, when the quarterback walked away to farewell tours and documentaries, The tackle slipped quietly into obscurity. His legacy measured not in highlight reels but in the absence of disaster. This role mirrors society itself. Nurses, firefighters, factory workers, they carry the same burden. Their value lies in preventing collapse, in holding chaos at bay. They are the invisible architecture of our world, the pillars that sustain the weight even if no headline ever thanks them. And so the philosophy becomes clear. The offensive tackle does not work for glory. He works for responsibility, for the knowledge that without him, no victory would stand. His triumph is silence, his recognition, absence. But I leave you with one question, the same one history has never quite answered. If there is no shield, can the hero truly stand?